Jiho Kim stepped off the transport shuttle and stared at the massive structure floating in space. Station Omega-7 was bigger than anything he had ever seen. The diplomatic hub stretched out like a metal city, with lights blinking from thousands of windows. Ships from dozens of different worlds docked at its ports. Jiho adjusted his uniform and picked up his engineering kit. He was just a corporal from Earth's expeditionary fleet, but right now he felt very small. The station's interior was even more impressive. High ceilings curved overhead, and the corridors were wide enough to fit vehicles. Jiho walked past creatures he had only seen in training videos. Some had scales. Others had fur or skin that seemed to shimmer like water. A few floated instead of walked. Everyone ignored the human as he made his way to the engineering section. Earth was new to the Galactic Council. Humanity had only made contact with alien life 3 years ago, and the Council still considered them a probationary species. That meant Earth got to send a small delegation, but they had no voting rights and limited access to most areas. Jiho was part of the support staff, here to maintain the human quarters and assist with technical issues. He found his quarters and dropped off his bag. The room was small but functional, with a bed, a desk, and a screen for communications. Jiho sat down and pulled up the station schematics on his datapad. As an engineer, he wanted to understand how everything worked. The more he studied the designs, the more his eyebrows rose. Something was wrong with the environmental systems. The oxygen recycling units were positioned too close to the power conduits. If there was any malfunction, any spark or overheating, it could cause serious problems. Jiho checked the calculations 3 times. He was sure of it. This was a safety hazard. He decided to report it immediately. Following the proper channels, Jiho submitted a maintenance request through the station's computer system. Then he sent a message to Ambassador Hyewan Lee, the head of Earth's delegation. She was in meetings all day, but her assistant, Minseo Park, replied within an hour. Minseo was a diplomatic liaison, skilled at navigating the complex politics of the council. She met Jiho in one of the station's common areas, a large space with seating designed for many different body types. Some chairs were for creatures with tails, others for beings much larger or smaller than humans. "You think there's a problem with the station?" Minseo asked, keeping her voice low. Other species were nearby and she didn't want to cause alarm. "I'm certain," Jiho said, showing her his datapad. "Look at these power readings. The conduits run too hot and they're right next to the oxygen lines. If anything goes wrong, it could start a fire?" Minseo looked confused. "A fire? What's that?" Jiho blinked. He forgot that Minseo grew up on a space station, not on Earth. Fire it's combustion. When something burns, you know, flames? "Oh, you mean thermal combustion?" Minseo's face went pale. "Jiho, that's not just a safety hazard. That's a catastrophic threat. We need to tell the council immediately." They requested an emergency meeting with the station's safety committee. It took 2 days to get approval, and when they finally entered the meeting room, Jiho felt intimidated. The chamber was circular with seats rising up in tiers. Representatives from different species looked down at them. At the center of the room stood Thorvax, a Krathix warrior who served as the station's chief of security. The Krathix were legendary. They stood 8 feet tall, covered in natural armor plates that looked like polished metal. They had never lost a war in 3,000 years. Thorvax had 4 arms, each thick with muscle, and his eyes glowed with a faint red light. When he spoke, his voice rumbled like distant thunder. "The humans claim there is a flaw in our station," Thorvax said, his tone making it clear he didn't believe them. "They have been here for 2 days and think they understand our engineering better than species who have built stations for millennia." Jiho stood his ground. "I'm not trying to insult anyone. I'm just pointing out a safety issue. The power conduits are too close to the oxygen recycling units. If there's a malfunction..." "Krathix engineering is perfect," Thorvax interrupted. "We have built 1,000 stations like this. Your species has barely left your own star system. You know nothing of our methods," Minseo tried to mediate. "We're not questioning Krathix skill. We're simply concerned about a potential hazard. Perhaps we could run a diagnostic." "Denied," Thorvax said flatly. "This meeting is over. The humans will return to their quarters and stop wasting the council's time." Jiho wanted to argue, but Minseo put a hand on his arm. They left the chamber in silence. As they walked back through the corridors, Jiho felt frustrated. He knew he was right. Why wouldn't they listen? "Don't take it personally," Minseo said quietly. The Council sees humans as primitives. We use chemical rockets while they use quantum drives. We still have diseases they cured centuries ago. To them, we're children playing at being adults. But I'm right about this, Jiho insisted. I know, but sometimes being right isn't enough. 3 days passed. Jiho went about his duties, maintaining the human quarters and helping Ambassador Haiwan with technical issues. He tried to forget about the safety hazard, but it nagged at him. Every time he walked past the environmental section, he thought about those power conduits. On the 4th day, alarms started blaring. Jiho was in his quarters when the emergency alert sounded. The station's computer announced a malfunction in Environmental Section 7, exactly where Jiho had predicted. He grabbed his engineering kit and ran toward the problem area. The corridors were chaos. Aliens rushed past him, heading in the opposite direction. Their faces showed panic. Some were shouting in languages Jiho didn't understand. He pushed against the crowd, making his way toward Section 7. When he turned the corner, he saw it. Smoke was coming from an access panel. Inside, through the vents, he could see small flames licking at the wiring. It wasn't a big fire yet, maybe the size of a campfire, but it was spreading. Then Jiho saw something that shocked him more than the fire itself. Thorvax, the mighty Krathix warrior, was backing away from the flames. His forearms were shaking. His glowing eyes were wide with terror. The creature who had faced 1,000 battles was running away from a fire that Jiho could probably extinguish with his jacket. "Thorvax!" Jiho called out. "Help me put it out!" But the Krathix warrior didn't stop. He fled down the corridor, joining the other aliens in their panicked evacuation. Jiho stood alone, staring at the small fire in confusion. The emergency speakers crackled to life. "All personnel evacuate immediately. Catastrophic combustion event in progress. This is not a drill. Evacuate to emergency shelters." Catastrophic? Jiho looked at the flames again. It was barely a fire. Back on Earth, this would be considered minor. The fire department wouldn't even send their full team. But here, on this advanced space station built by species that crossed the galaxy, everyone was treating it like the end of the world. Jiho set down his engineering kit and pulled out a fire extinguisher. It was a standard model from Earth, part of his personal equipment. The station probably didn't even have fire extinguishers, he realized. Why would they if no one knew how to fight fires? He looked down the empty corridor. Everyone was gone. The alarms were still blaring. The fire was growing. Jiho took a deep breath and walked toward the flames. Someone had to deal with this, and apparently, he was the only one who knew how. He was beginning to understand something important about humanity's place in the galaxy. What humans took for granted, what they had controlled for hundreds of thousands of years, was completely alien to every other species out here. Fire was humanity's oldest tool, and in this vast galaxy, it was also humanity's most terrifying weapon. Jiho pulled the pin on the fire extinguisher and aimed at the base of the flames. White foam sprayed out, covering the burning wiring. The fire fought back for a moment, but Jiho knew what he was doing. He had taken fire safety training in the military, and he had helped his grandfather at the family restaurant back in Seoul, where kitchen fires were a monthly occurrence. Within 2 minutes, the fire was out. Jiho used his tools to disconnect the damaged power conduit and secure the area. He checked for hotspots with his thermal scanner, making sure nothing would reignite. The whole process took less than 10 minutes. When he was satisfied the area was safe, Jiho made his way to the emergency shelter. The corridors were empty now, lit by red emergency lighting. His footsteps echoed in the silence. He found the shelter entrance and pressed the access button. The heavy doors slid open with a hiss. Inside, hundreds of aliens were crowded together. Some were sitting on the floor. Others were huddled in groups. A few were making strange sounds that Jiho guessed were crying or praying. The air smelled of fear and the strange mix of alien body chemistry. Every eye turned to look at Jiho as he walked in. The room went silent. "The fire is out," Jiho said simply. "Section 7 is secure. The damaged conduit is disconnected. We should be safe now." No one moved. They just stared at him like he had grown a second head. Thorvax pushed through the crowd. The Krathix warrior's armor was scratched, probably from his panicked flight through the corridors. His glowing eyes studied Jiho with an expression the human couldn't read. "You went toward the burning death," Thorvax said slowly. "You faced it, alone." "Well, yes," Jiho said. "Someone had to put it out." "Put it out?" A voice called from the crowd. It was Velthar, a crystalline being who served as the station's chief scientist. Her body looked like living glass, and her voice had a musical quality. You cannot put out combustion. It consumes until there is nothing left. That is the nature of the burning death. Jiho looked around the shelter. He saw Ambassador Hiwon and Minseo near the back. They looked just as confused as he felt. I don't understand. Fire is dangerous, yes, but it's not that hard to control. You just need to remove one of the three elements: heat, fuel, or oxygen. Take away one and the fire goes out. The alien stared at him in stunned silence. A small creature that looked like a floating jellyfish spoke up. This is impossible. Combustion is chaos. It cannot be controlled. It can only be fled. But humans use fire all the time, Jiho said. We've been using it for, I don't know, maybe 400,000 years. Maybe longer. We cook with it. We heat our homes. We use it in engines and power plants. The shelter erupted in shocked chattering. Different species spoke to each other in their own languages. Some sounded frightened. Others sounded amazed. A few sounded angry. Ambassador Hiwon made her way to the front. She was a dignified woman in her 50s, with gray streaks in her black hair. She had been a diplomat on Earth before joining the space program, and she knew how to read a room. Right now, her expression was carefully neutral. Perhaps we should explain, Hiwon said calmly. Humans have a long history with fire. It's fundamental to our development as a species. A reptilian delegate raised a clawed hand. You bring the burning death into your homes? On purpose? We call it fire, not burning death, Minseo said, stepping forward to help. And yes, humans cook their food over fire. They sit around fires to stay warm. They use controlled combustion to power vehicles and generate electricity. Thorvax made a sound that might have been disbelief. Your species has mastered the most dangerous force in the universe. This is what you are telling us. Is it really the most dangerous force? Jiho asked. I mean, you have antimatter reactors. Those seem more dangerous than fire. Belthar's crystalline body shimmered. Antimatter is predictable. It follows the laws of physics. We can contain it with magnetic fields and calculate exactly how it will behave. But combustion is chaos. It spreads without pattern. It consumes everything. It cannot be stopped. Except we stopped it, Jiho pointed out. Just now. With a fire extinguisher. What is a fire extinguisher? Several aliens asked at once. Jiho held up the red cylinder he was still carrying. It's a tool for putting out fires. This one uses foam to smother the flames and cool down the fuel source. There are other types too. Water, carbon dioxide, chemical powder. We have lots of ways to fight fire. The shelter was silent again. The aliens looked at the fire extinguisher like it was a weapon of mass destruction. An elderly delegate from a species Jiho didn't recognize spoke in a trembling voice. My people lost an entire colony ship to the burning death 300 years ago. 16,000 souls. We had no way to stop it. We could only watch as it consumed everything. Other delegates nodded or made gestures of agreement. One by one, they shared stories. A research station abandoned after a fire started in the laboratory. A mining operation where combustion killed dozens of workers. A diplomatic vessel that had to be destroyed after flames broke out in the engine room. Jiho listened to these stories and felt a chill run down his spine. These were advanced civilizations. They traveled between stars. They had technology that seemed like magic to humans, but they were helpless against something humans had controlled since the Stone Age. Ambassador Hiwon seemed to be thinking the same thing. Jiho could see the wheels turning in her head. This was a diplomatic opportunity unlike anything Earth had expected. A small mouse-like delegate raised a paw. How did your ancestors learn to control the burning death? Surely many died in the process? Jiho shrugged. Probably yes. But over time we figured out the rules. Fire needs fuel, oxygen, and heat. Control those three things and you control fire. Humans learn to start fires, keep them going, put them out, and most importantly, keep them from spreading where we don't want them. And now you teach these skills to your children? Thorvax asked. Well, yes. Fire safety is basic education. Kids learn not to play with matches. They learn what to do if there's a fire. Stop, drop, and roll if your clothes catch fire. Stay low to avoid smoke. Feel doors before opening them. That kind of thing. The Krathix warrior sat down heavily. For a creature so large and powerful, he suddenly looked very tired. Your species teaches children to face the thing we fear most. This explains much about humans. A new voice spoke up. It was a tall, thin being with purple skin and too many joints in its limbs. The question now is what we do with this information. Humans can control combustion. They can fight the burning death. This makes them either very valuable or very dangerous. The mood in the shelter shifted. Jiho felt it immediately. Some aliens looked at him with hope. Others looked at him with suspicion. A few looked at him with fear. Ambassador Haiwan stepped forward, her diplomatic instincts taking over. Earth would be happy to share our knowledge of fire safety with the Council. We could train personnel in basic fire suppression and prevention. This would benefit everyone. Or, the purple delegate said coldly, humans could use this unique ability as a weapon. You could threaten combustion against anyone who opposes you. Fire could be your tool of domination. That's not what we want, Haiwan said firmly. Humans want to be part of the galactic community, not feared by it. Thorvax stood up again. His armor plates scraped together as he moved. The human engineer warned us about the danger. We did not listen. The human engineer faced the burning death while we fled. He saved this station and everyone on it. These are not the actions of an enemy. The Krathix warrior looked directly at Jiho. I was wrong to dismiss you. Your species may be young, but you have mastered something we cannot even comprehend. I formally apologize. Jiho hadn't expected that. He nodded awkwardly. Apology accepted. And for what it's worth, I understand why you ran. If fire is completely unknown to your species, of course you'd be terrified. A tentacled delegate raised several appendages. I propose that the human engineer teach a course in fire safety. Select personnel from each species could learn basic suppression techniques. This would prevent future tragedies. Other delegates began discussing the idea. Some were enthusiastic. Others were cautious. A few were openly opposed. The argument went on for over an hour. Finally, the council's senior administrator called for a vote. It was close, but the motion passed. Jiho would teach fire safety to a small group of volunteers. If the program was successful, it might expand. As the delegates filed out of the shelter to inspect the damage and return to their quarters, Thorvax approached Jiho again. I will be your first student, the Krathix warrior said. I have faced enemies across 100 worlds, but today I learned I am a coward. I must overcome this weakness. You're not a coward, Jiho said. You just never encountered fire before. There's a difference between cowardice and facing the unknown. Thorvax's eyes glowed a little brighter. Perhaps. But I will learn from you, human engineer. Teach me to face the burning death without fear. Jiho nodded. He had come to this station as a simple engineer. Now he was about to become a teacher. He just hoped he was ready for it. Jiho spent 3 days setting up the training facility. He chose one of the station's cargo bays, a large open space with high ceilings and good ventilation. He installed fire suppression systems, set up safety barriers, and arranged several workstations. Earth sent supplies through the next transport, including fire extinguishers, protective gear, and training materials. Soman Choi arrived with the supplies. She was a specialist in xenocultural communication, sent by Earth specifically to help with this program. Soman was young, probably only 25, but she had a gift for understanding alien psychology. She would help translate human concepts into terms other species could understand. So you're the guy who punched out a fire while everyone else ran away, Soman said, grinning as she unpacked boxes. You're basically a legend now. The human who walks through flames. I didn't walk through flames, Jiho said. I put out a small fire with an extinguisher. People are making it sound more dramatic than it was. To them, it was dramatic. Imagine if someone told you they could breathe in space without a suit. That's how impossible it seems to these aliens. Soman pulled out a box of candles and held one up. We're really starting with these? We have to start simple. Candles are the safest way to demonstrate basic combustion. The first class began the next morning. Jiho had 7 students. Thorvax was there, along with 2 other Krathix warriors named Dravix and Korthan. Velthar the crystalline scientist attended, eager to understand the chemistry of combustion. There was also a small furry creature called Pipkin, who maintained the station's life support, a floating squid-like being named Cora, and a humanoid with blue skin called Rexon who worked in security. They all looked nervous as they entered the training bay. Their eyes darted around looking for danger. Thorvax's 4 hands kept moving to his weapons, then pulling away as he remembered this was a classroom, not a battlefield. Good morning, Jiho said, standing at the front of the room. Thank you all for being here. I know this is scary for you. Fire is something your species have never dealt with. But I promise you by the end of this course you'll understand how fire works and how to control it. Control it, Corthan repeated, his voice doubtful. The burning death cannot be controlled. It can, Solman said, stepping forward. But first we need to change how you think about it. In human languages, we don't call it burning death. We call it fire, just fire. It's not a monster or a demon. It's a chemical reaction. Velthar's crystalline body brightened with interest. Explain the chemistry. Jiho pulled up a holographic display. Fire needs 3 things to exist. We call it the fire triangle. First, you need fuel. That's something that can burn, like wood, paper, or certain gases. Second, you need oxygen. Third, you need heat to start the reaction. Remove any one of these 3 things and the fire goes out. He showed diagrams of molecules reacting, of combustion chains breaking down. Velthar absorbed this information quickly, her scientist's mind grasping the concepts. The others looked less certain. So if we remove the oxygen, Pipkin said slowly, the burning death stops? The fire stops, yes, Jiho confirmed. That's how some fire extinguishers work. They release carbon dioxide, which pushes the oxygen away. No oxygen, no fire. What about water? Cora asked, their tentacles waving nervously. Does water stop combustion? Usually, yes. Water cools down the fuel and smothers the flames, but not always. Some fires are too hot for water, and some materials react badly with water. That's why we have different types of extinguishers. Thorvax leaned forward. Show us. Jiho had expected this. He picked up a candle and a lighter. The moment he revealed them, every alien in the room tensed. Dreyfix actually stood up, ready to run. It's okay, Soman said calmly. This is completely controlled. Jiho has done this thousands of times, watch. Jiho flicked the lighter. A small flame appeared. The aliens gasped. Pipkin made a squeaking sound of fear. Thorvax's hands gripped the edge of his desk so hard the metal bent slightly. This is fire, Jiho said, keeping his voice steady and calm. It's about 1 inch tall. It's burning the gas from this lighter. Watch what happens when I take away the fuel. He released the lighter's button. The flame disappeared instantly. The aliens stared in amazement. It just stopped, Rexon said. You made it stop. I took away the fuel, Jiho explained. No fuel, no fire. Now watch this. He lit the candle. The flame danced on top of the wick, casting a gentle yellow glow. The aliens watched it like prey animals watching a predator. This flame is burning the wax from the candle. The wax melts, travels up the wick, and turns into vapor that burns. It's a self-sustaining reaction as long as there's wax and oxygen. Jiho picked up a metal cup and placed it over the candle. A few seconds later, the flame went out. He lifted the cup. I took away the oxygen. The flame used up all the air inside the cup and then went out. Incredible, Velthar whispered. The reaction is predictable. It follows rules. Exactly, Soman said. That's the most important thing to understand. Fire isn't magic or chaos. It's chemistry. Once you know the rules, you can predict what fire will do. Jiho relit the candle. This time he let it burn while he explained the different parts of a flame. The blue base where combustion is hottest, the yellow middle where particles are burning, the faint outer glow. He showed them how the flame bent when he waved his hand near it, how it grew taller with more fuel, how it shrank in less oxygen. The first lesson lasted 2 hours. By the end, the aliens were still nervous, but they were also curious. They asked questions about temperature, about different materials, about why flames were different colors. Velthar wanted to know about the exact chemical bonds breaking and forming. Thorvax wanted to know how fire could be used as a weapon. We'll get to all of that, Jiho promised. But first, you need to be comfortable around small fires. Tomorrow we'll practice lighting and extinguishing candles. Each of you will do it yourself. That night, Soman and Jiho debriefed in the station's human quarters. Minseo joined them, bringing food from the station's commissary. It was supposed to be compatible with human biology, but it tasted like salty cardboard. They're terrified, Soman said, but they're trying. That's good. Thorvax almost ran when I lit the lighter, Jiho said. A warrior who's fought in hundreds of battles and a tiny flame scared him. It's not about courage, Minseo pointed out. It's about instinct. Their species probably evolved on worlds without oxygen-rich atmospheres. They never encountered combustion in their natural environment. To them, fire is as alien as humans are. Do you think they'll actually learn? Jiho asked. I think they have to, Minseo said. After that emergency, the council realized how vulnerable they are. If a small fire can shut down an entire station, they need to learn how to deal with it. You're not just teaching fire safety, Jiho. You're giving them a tool for survival. The training continued over the next 2 weeks. Each day, Jiho introduced something new. The students learned to light matches, to use different types of fire extinguishers, to recognize different classes of fires. They practiced stop, drop, and roll. They learned about smoke inhalation and how to escape a burning room. Progress was slow. Corthan had a panic attack during a demonstration and had to leave the room. Pipkin refused to hold a lighter for 3 days straight. But gradually they improved. The breakthrough came on day 16. Jiho set up a controlled burn in a metal container. It was a small fire, burning wood scraps, but it was bigger than anything the students had seen so far. The flames reached about 2 feet high. Today, Jiho announced, one of you is going to extinguish this fire. The room went silent. Thorvax stood up. I will do it. The Krathix warrior walked to the front of the room. His hands were shaking, but his face was determined. Jiho handed him a fire extinguisher and reviewed the instructions. Pull pin, aim at base. Squeeze handle, sweep side to side. Thorvax approached the fire. He was a giant compared to Jiho. Covered in natural armor, armed with weapons that could cut through steel. But facing these flames, he looked vulnerable. Remember, Jiho said quietly, the fire follows rules. You know what it needs. Take away one of those 3 things and you win. Thorvax pulled the pin. He aimed the extinguisher. His finger hesitated over the handle. The fire popped and crackled. A small ember flew upward. Thorvax flinched. You can do this, Somin encouraged. You're stronger than the fire. Thorvax squeezed the handle. Foam sprayed out, covering the flames. He swept from side to side just like Jiho had taught him. The fire fought back, but Thorvax kept spraying. Within 30 seconds, the fire was out. The Krathix warrior stood there staring at the smoking container. His hands had stopped shaking. I did it, he said quietly. Then louder, I did it! I defeated the burning death. The other students made sounds of celebration in their various languages. Even Velthar, who usually remained calm, flickered with what might have been excitement. Thorvax turned to Jiho. How did your ancestors first learn this? How did early humans master combustion without tools or knowledge? Jiho thought about it. Trial and error, probably. Desperation. Someone was cold and needed warmth. Someone was hungry and wanted cooked food. Someone was afraid of predators and used fire to keep them away. Humans probably got burned a lot, made a lot of mistakes. But we needed fire to survive, so we kept trying until we figured it out. Your species is braver than I thought, Thorvax said. Or perhaps more desperate. Either way, you earned your mastery. The celebration was cut short by an alarm, not the emergency klaxon, but a security alert. Someone had broken into the training base supply room. Jiho and Thorvax ran to investigate. The door was forced open and supplies were scattered everywhere. But worse, someone had tampered with the safety systems. The fire suppression system was disabled, and accelerant had been poured on the floor. A small device sat in the corner counting down. 5 minutes. Bomb, Thorvax said immediately. No, worse. An ignition device. Someone is going to start a fire here deliberately. Jiho's blood ran cold. With the suppression system down and accelerant everywhere, this whole bay could become an inferno. And his students were still inside. Everyone out! Jiho shouted, running back into the main training area. We need to evacuate now. The students looked up in confusion. Somin saw Jiho's face and immediately started herding people toward the exit. But the door suddenly slammed shut. The lock engaged with a heavy clunk. Someone had triggered it remotely. We're trapped, Rexon said, his blue skin turning pale. What's happening? Thorvax pointed at the vents. Smoke was beginning to seep through. The device must have triggered early. The fire has started. Jiho ran to the door controls and tried to override them. Nothing worked. The system was completely locked down. He pulled out his communicator to call for help, but there was no signal. Someone was jamming communications. The smoke was getting thicker. Through the vents, Jiho could see the orange glow of flames. The fire was spreading through the supply room and moving toward the main bay. They had maybe 2 minutes before it reached them. Pipkin started making panicked squeaking sounds. Korra's tentacles flailed wildly. Drevix backed into a corner, his warrior training forgotten in the face of primal fear. Jiho, Somin said urgently. What do we do? Jiho forced himself to think. This was bad, very bad. But panic would kill them faster than fire. He looked around the training bay, assessing their resources. Fire extinguishers on the walls, protective gear in the lockers. the emergency air supply for training exercises, and 6 aliens who had just started learning fire safety. Okay, listen to me, Jiho said, projecting calm he didn't feel. We've been training for this. Not exactly this situation, but the principles are the same. We can survive if we follow the rules. Thorvax, you just put out a fire. You can do it again. The Krathix warrior's eyes were wide, but he nodded. Tell me what to do. Everyone grab a fire extinguisher from the wall. Put on the protective gear from the lockers. Masks, gloves, everything. Salman helped them suit up. Move fast, but don't panic. While the others scrambled to follow instructions, Jiho ran to the emergency air supply. It was designed for training. Not a real emergency, but it might buy them a few extra minutes. He activated it, and cool oxygen started flowing from ceiling vents. Outside the bay, he could hear the roar of flames growing louder. The door, Belthar said, her crystalline body reflecting the orange glow from the vents. We must open the door. I tried. It's locked down, Jiho said. We need another way out. Korthan pointed to a maintenance hatch on the ceiling. That leads to the ventilation system. Could we escape through there? Maybe, but the fire is in the ventilation system now. We'd be crawling toward the flames. Jiho studied the room layout. Wait, the cargo doors. This is a cargo bay, so there must be large doors for loading and unloading. He ran to the far wall and found the control panel for the bay's massive cargo doors. These doors opened directly to space, used when ships needed to load large equipment. If he could open them just a crack, it would vent the fire out into space. But it would also vent all their air. That's suicide, Rexon said, reading his intention. We'll be sucked into space, not if we're secured, Jiho said. He pointed to the safety harnesses hanging on the wall, used for zero-gravity training. We put those on, anchor ourselves to the support beams, and wait for the rescue team. Once the fire is vented, they can get in. A loud crash made everyone jump. Part of the ceiling collapsed and flames poured through. The fire had breached the main bay. Heat washed over them in waves. No time to debate, Thorvax roared. Do as the human says. They worked together, fighting their fear. Jiho and Soman helped everyone into harnesses and clipped them to the structural beams that ran along the walls. The heat was intense now. Smoke filled the upper half of the bay. The fire spread across the ceiling, eating through cables and panels. A support beam collapsed near Pipkin. The small alien shrieked and scrambled away. The fire was growing faster than Jiho had expected. The accelerant must have been very effective. We're not going to make it, Dravik said, his voice hollow with defeat. The burning death will consume us. No, Thorvax said firmly. He grabbed a fire extinguisher and sprayed foam at the encroaching flames. We fight. Like the human taught us. His example inspired the others. Velthar grabbed an extinguisher and attacked a different section of fire. Korra used their tentacles to operate 2 extinguishers at once. They couldn't stop the fire, but they slowed it down, buying precious seconds. Jiho reached the cargo door controls. He input the manual override code, his fingers shaking from adrenaline. The door began to open slowly, just a crack at first. Air started rushing out, pulling smoke and heat with it. Hold on, Jiho shouted. The suction increased as the door opened wider. Small objects flew past them, pulled toward space. The fire twisted and bent as oxygen was stripped away. Flames flickered and died in sections where the air was thinnest, but the door was opening too slowly. The fire was adapting, pulling back to areas with more oxygen. They needed to open the door faster. Thorvax saw the problem. He unclipped his harness and ran toward the door controls. I'm stronger. I can force it open manually. Thorvax, no, Jiho shouted. You'll be pulled out. Then I'll hold on, the Krathix warrior said. He reached the door mechanism and grabbed the manual release lever. His forearm strained as he pulled. The door's opening speed increased, the suction became violent. Everything not tied down flew toward the opening. The fire screamed as it was ripped apart by the escaping air. Thorvax's feet left the ground as the pull tried to drag him toward space. But he held on. His massive strength kept him anchored to the lever as he forced the door wider. The fire began to die, starved of oxygen, pulled into the void. Then Jiho saw it. A large piece of burning debris torn from the ceiling, flying straight toward Thorvax. The warrior was focused on the door and didn't see it coming. Jiho unclipped his own harness and launched himself toward Thorvax. He tackled the Krathix warrior from the side, knocking them both away from the flying debris. It shot past them and out into space. But now they were both airborne, being pulled toward the open door. Toward vacuum, Salman screamed and threw her safety cable. Jiho caught it with one hand while holding onto Thorvax with the other. The cable went taut, stopping their flight. Jiho's shoulder felt like it was being ripped from his socket, but he didn't let go. Korthan and Dravix grabbed their comrade and pulled them back to safety. Jiho's hands were numb, but he managed to clip himself back to a support beam. Thorvax did the same.